Did you hear the news? Light and magic are kicking the shit out of everybody in the Mythic meta. Let's talk about why in today's video. Alright guys, welcome back to the video. Before we begin, do the things, right? Like, subscribe if you're enjoying the content, if you like what I've got going on here on the channel. Like I said, like, subscribe, helps us out tremendously. Thank you very much, and let's go ahead and dive in. So, if you've been paying attention, if you've been playing the game Gods Unchained at all recently, you've noticed that light and magic are pretty much dominating the meta, especially the higher tiers of play, gold and above. And I wanted to take the time to talk about why that is in today's video, go into some of the tactics, some of the reasons why I think this exists, also maybe discuss in the end some particular ways to counter these particular decks and the decks that tend to do the best against them. So let's go ahead and jump first into the most dominant sort of domain in the meta right now, which is light. Now, the thing that's interesting to me about light is when I first started the playing game back in, like November of last year, light was the worst domain bar none. But in the recent core refresh, which I did a video on here, in the recent core refresh and a few other things, light got some buffs and it turned out pretty well for light. Light has suddenly surged ahead as the prevalent and dominant domain in the meta. And the reason for that, number one, I think the first reason is just buffs. Like, light's ability to buff up creatures is second to none. You have cards like Shield Bearer, Fila Janissary, Holy Enchanter, Radiant Dawn. There's so many different ways to increase your creature's strength, health, and basically buff those lower mana cost creatures up as high as possible. And if you play your cards right, and if you have a good deck with lots of duplicates and you have lots of those lower mana cost creatures, you can very quickly stack the board with, 1, 2, or 2, 3, or 2, 2 cards and buff the shit out of them. And suddenly you're looking at a board that is full 6 across with, buffs to strength, buffs to health in particular. I've seen some light decks that I've gone up against get, like an Acolyte as high as like 4-8 in terms of, strength to health. And just the way that how quickly the buffs can stack up in light is, again, second to none in my opinion. And the buffs to health, and then in combination with the amount of healing that you get from light, whether that's through the God Power heal, things like Holy Enchanter, Radiant Spirit, or not Holy Enchanter, but a Radiant Spirit rather, they're just like, it excels at keeping creatures, not only getting creatures on the field that are low cost, buffing them up high, but also keeping them there by allowing you to continuously heal. And that is key to maintaining sort of, action economy superiority and just more creatures on the field than your opponent. The second reason why I think light is just dominating is debuffs, and that includes, control, right? Debuffing is part of the sort of control playstyle, but again, I think that light excels rather at the different aspects of control in the game. One of the best debuffs that comes with light is order. Light's ability to inflict order onto enemy creatures is, again, like I said, second to none. Maybe deception is up there with the ability to, dole out order, but you just have so many different ways to do it. Divine Chains, Watchful Hound, the Serene Blade Relic. I think it's like not Exalted Hermit, but there's another card, I'll throw it up on the screen, that just as its roar, you get to inflict order 3. You have Censure, which is a 1 mana cost, and you get to give order +3 to 2 different creatures. There's just so many ways to inflict order, and order just basically renders a card useless. Like, you can't use it, it's not a valid thing for attacks. And there's also ways to destroy creatures with order in light. So you can give it order, then obliterate it. Its ability to basically fill your opponent's board up with creatures that can't be used is awesome. Light also is fantastic at, like I said, just debuffs overall, decreasing health, decreasing strength. I mean, like Lysander's Honor, which is one of the most annoying god powers. You have cards like Pacifism, which just give a -4 strength. So you can take suddenly a 4, like a 5 mana cost 4/4 card, give it -4 strength, and it's just sitting there, fucking useless. So again, light's ability to debuff, decrease strength, decrease health is very solid. There's also cards like Light's Levy, which just lets you turn, a 2 or less strength creature into an Acolyte and gain control of it. And so you've removed a creature from them, added one to your own board, all for the cost of 3 mana. So, it makes it really, really effective. And then finally, summons. Light is just your ability to get creatures on the board is crazy. There's a lot of great low mana cost creatures, things like Shield Bearer, Aging Veteran, Exalted Hermit, and then on top of that, you can continuously summon, Acolytes. You have like the Summon Acolyte, the most dominant god power, like I mentioned earlier. You also have things like Zealous March, which lets you fill your board with Acolytes and then gives all of your creatures protected. Which is one of the most popular cards in the light meta, but just the ability to continuously summon creatures and get things on on the board makes it so that that action economy is always in your favor, and then again, you buff the shit out of them with all of your cards, and you can continuously heal them. Overall, like I said, I think that Light's ability to get creatures on the field through summoning and various things, and just having a lot of great low mana cost cards, its ability to buff those low mana cost cards and get their strength and health up really high, and its ability to keep those creatures on the field through healing is what makes it so dominant in the meta. And not to mention, you know, the control that you can get from inflicting order. Just all of those things stack up to make a really effective deck. You've got great offensive capability, you've got great control ability, and you have awesome buffing and debuffing. And that is why right now Light has a significantly higher win rate in the Mythic ranks, and overall, I think, than any other deck in the meta. Now, of course, the other elephant in the room is Magic, which Magic, I think, underwent a bit of a nerf with the core refresh overall. But when you look at the Mythic ranks, Magic has the second highest win rate of any domain. Hey. Hey. Good boy. Good boy. Okay, get out of here. So let's go ahead and dive into why Magic is, like I said, so effective. And the first reason I think is foreseeing and card draw. Magic has an ability to foresee what's coming up in your deck and draw cards quicker than any other domain, period. And this just adds up to the ability to strategize ahead of time that is not available to other decks. And then also just to get as many cards as possible into your hand. Because in my opinion, usually when I'm looking at an opponent and they have a lot more cards in their hand than me, I'm probably going to lose because they just have more options. Like, they just have more stuff in their deck. And so usually the player with the most cards in their hand wins. And that's one of the things that makes Magic so effective. The other thing that makes Magic so effective is removal. I mean, spells, just fucking spells. Magic has a singular ability to get creatures off of the board so quickly that is unmatched by any other deck, even board wipe decks like Death, in my opinion. I mean, you have so many options for at-will damage, and the thing about spells is spells are not attacks, so they don't care about things like backline, they don't care about things like order. You can just deal damage to creatures. And then in addition, you have the combination of Mage Bolt, which is the most dominant power, god power used rather in the Magic meta. You have Mage Bolt, which can very quickly take care of things like order and ward, and get rid of those pesky sort of barriers, and then you can drop a Star Shard Bolt, a Blizzard Bolt, a Tracking Bolt, a Crystal Rain, like, you get the picture, right? There's just so many cards that can deal at will damage, that don't care about backline, that don't care about order, and can just remove cards from the board. And honestly, I think that these two things alone, like I said, the ability to foresee and draw as many cards as possible, and then the ability to just remove cards from the board quickly, is why Magic is firmly rooted in the second most highest win rate spot in the game. So with Light and Magic being the dominant sort of domains in the meta, that begs the question of like how to counter it, which is very interesting because Magic performs the worst against Light. In the Mythic meta, Magic has a 39.6% win rate against Light, which is fucking insane. So interestingly enough, the way to counter one of these two top decks is to use the other one, which kind of makes sense. Overall, Magic has a pretty solid win rate, above 50% against pretty much every other deck type. Its second lowest win rate being up against Death, which, I mean, kind of makes sense because Death has the ability to board wipe also very well, when compared to Magic. But that begs the question, if Light is the counter to Magic, what's the counter to Light? And the answer, from everything I've been able to see, is Deception. I think Deception's ability to induce sleep, to inflict burn and order as well, and its also ability to get around a lot of the frontline creatures that are dominant in the Light decks, make for a really good matchup when it comes to Deception versus Light. Also, Deception has the ability to steal a lot of 1-mana cost cards from your opponent's domain, has the ability to sleep a lot, like I said, and so that makes for a really interesting matchup because Deception also is able to control really well, and I think that's what makes that matchup so interesting. The thing is that Deception doesn't do as well against almost any of the other decks. Deception versus Light has like a 54% win rate, but against a lot of the other decks, it's not as good. So kind of begs the question of like, is it worth it to try for a Deception deck when ultimately you're gonna be better off with Light and Magic? And I think that's why they are the two most dominant playstyles in the meta. So that's it. I mean, I just wanted to, like I said, take a minute, talk about why I think these two things are the same. I'm very interested to see how the upcoming Mortal Judgment expansion at the end of April is going to maybe shake up the existing meta. It looks like there's some great cards that are gonna be added to a lot of different domains. I'm actually doing another video about that that'll probably come out later, that'll come out next week as we get closer and closer to the end of the month where Mortal Judgment will drop. Probably gonna do that in 2 parts as there's a lot of cards, but that will be coming soon. So anyway, if you liked today's video, guys, make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, do all the things. I hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you in the next one. Thank you so much for your time, and don't forget to game it till you make it. Later, everybody.